Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Bellona Pavilion. We're very happy today to have a discussion on the interlinkages between development assistance and the Paris Agreement. We're going to have a very interactive and interesting panel in a short while with representatives from UK, Germany, US, and Norway. To kick us off, I would like to invite the Director General of Norad, Mr. Bård Vegar Solhjell, to tell us a little bit about your thoughts about how we should address these issues. Welcome, Bård Vegar.
Take this off. Okay, thank you so much, Stig, and thanks for joining us here, and not to speak of people joining us online. We're really glad to have you with us for this discussion around here. What I'm going to do is I'll set the stage for discussion a little bit first, and then I'll run through the work we've been doing with this in Norad and in Norway. And after that, we'll do a discussion around here. So basically, I think in the decades to come, our work will be about integrating development and climate fully for it actually to becoming the same task, the same mission. And the new Norwegian government, and that came into office only a month ago, have stated, both the Prime Minister and the Minister of International Development, that their project will be exactly to integrate climate and development, and to make it one issue, and to look for the measures that can contribute to both. Earlier this week, Norway pledged that we will increase or double our climate finance from 2021 till 2026, up to $1.6 billion in 2026, making us a major contributor to the global goals. We also, I have to say, take a lot of pride in being one of very few countries spending 1% of our gross domestic income on global development. And within the pledge of doubling, there's also a pledge to triple climate adaptation spending to 2026, which will of course increase the percentage of spending going to adaptation. So our mission, Norad, we manage approximately half of all Norwegian total ODA. We manage grants used for many purposes, from health through education to catalyzing private capital in different ways. And it will be our task to set the money to work to spend most of these resources globally. So with the new government in office only a month ago saying that their mission is to integrate climate in environment, it's luck or good preparations that we have been working with that for a year actually up until now, and just launched a new strategy earlier this year, and recently launched our action plan for green development. And I'll try and run through some of the main measures we will be implementing in the years to come. Well, we launched a strategy, and that's a strategy towards 2030. And that was deliberately. We wanted to take the long run, not just think, 2 to 3 years ahead, but to look towards 2030, which the direction we'll be heading in. We will renew the strategy as we go. And there's another reason for the year 2030. The SDGs or the whole Agenda 2030 has that at its limit. And the Paris Agreement, of course, as 2030 is an important year. In the action plan, which it resolves around low emission development, biodiversity and adaptation, but we identified 5 work streams or areas of work for us as an agency. And I will take you really briefly through each of these, spending a little bit more time on number 2 and number 3 specifically. The first one is, of course, not the most important. Well, I mean, we manage funds of approximately $2 billion, and our own footprint is very small compared to the footprint of the capital. But we decided to start with ourselves, which is, I mean, often smart in life, I would say. So we decided that we will halve our own emissions by 2030, our own footprint, in line with the 1.5 degree global or Paris goal. That means reduced emissions from travels. It means environmental requirements for procurement. These two, and of course energy. These areas are most of our footprint. And I should say, of course, travel is the issue here, the challenging issue and the most important issue. So what we have done is we decided to take a big chunk of that from 2022. So we compared ourselves with 2019, and we are reducing 30% from that in 2022. And the reason is simple, because we are able to do it now after 2 years where we have learned that it is possible to travel less and do our mission and deliver with quality. Secondly, this is not working now. Can you check on it? Well, I'll just speak it. If you can get the next slide, I'm happy. So the second part is of course delivering even more on the part of our spending that is aimed directly at climate and environment. So every 1 out of 5 Norwegian kroner or US dollar that we spend is aimed directly at climate, energy, forests, biodiversity, the environmental sector. So we want it to be as efficient as possible. So of course, and especially since it will be increasing substantially. So we decided that we would do work to go heavily into the empirical evidence on different sectors of the things we actually do. Also looking at other areas within the climate sector that we should do more on. And we did an in-depth study which was launched just a few weeks ago. There we looked specifically at energy, forests, and food systems. These are 3 areas where we are heavily involved. We are working with several of the partners represented here today, and also on some issues have been a global leader alongside others. Then we looked at what do we know, what kind of evidence do we have on which parts of the work is working better than other parts? What can we learn from other donors, the international, the multilateral donors, about what is more efficient than other parts of it? Then we also looked at 3, or we also asked them to look at other things we are not doing that we should do when we are, scaling up on climate. And we got from the project, we got 3 proposals. One is circular economy. We're doing a little bit on it, on plastics and litter, for instance, just working on an agreement with USAID now, and also working multilaterally on that, but not a lot. Should we engage even more in the circular economy? Question mark. Second is urban development. When we look at our portfolio, especially in Africa, which is of course the most important continent for our ODA, it's heavily engaged in the agricultural sector and in rural areas. but there's like on every continent, there's a movement to more towards urban areas. There's an urbanization, especially among the young population. What should that mean for our work? And thirdly, green taxes and fossil subsidies is also an area that was suggested for us to do more on. We have a program today called Tax for Development, where we work with tax institutions and governments in partner countries, helping them not increase or lower taxes, but to be efficient in actually getting the taxes that they should collect, they decided to collect, making sure they have there's transparency, that they can fight corruption and illicit financial flows from their countries. So I'm making sure now that you understood there's a question mark behind this, but these are areas we want to check out. So that was number one and number two. Oh, there it is. Are you able to get slide number? Yeah, and then the next one. Fantastic. Saved by Bellona's excellent technical team here. So the third work stream was, what can we do on all the other areas, not only to avoid doing harm, but to enhance climate and environment and actually create co-benefits. And if you can turn, let's see if it's working here now. Ah, fantastic, good feeling. So here are three examples that I picked, to explain what that could be. So we are engaged in vocational training with GIZ from Germany, for instance. Could we do even more in terms of getting people ready for the green jobs of the future, making sure that the competence is there for green investments? Renewable energy and humanitarian assistance, of course, absolutely relevant, and maybe most important for us, because if you look at Norwegian ODA, the health sector is the biggest sector. We spend a lot of money through Gavi and the Global Fund and other mechanisms globally. In the real world, health and environment, they're so closely interlinked, right? But if you look at how we're working, it's different sections, different departments, different worlds, different ministries in the government, different conferences, different public debates and so on. We need to integrate for the future. Stig, would you just see if you could get me a glass of water, please? Then it's number 4, and that's how we are working with key partners to strengthen their environmental management and performance. Of course, we are working with a set of big partners internationally, many of them much bigger than us. And for some of them, we are an important and substantial donor. Some of them are much better than us, I have to admit. I mean, both multilaterals and NGOs, I know of some of them that have, we've been doing these things for years. Others, not so much. So what we will do is to challenge them. So when recently I met with the board chair of Gavi, then this was pretty high on my list of issues to discuss with him. Or when I meet the Global Fund, or when I meet UNICEF or UNESCO, or when I meet NGOs that we are working with, we bring it up. And we will also take it into a more formal processes, to agreements, and make sure that we follow up on that, and that strengthening environmental management is part of the things that we demand from our partners. And finally, we will also support national implementation of environmental agreements, of course, meaning specifically NDCs, but also other partners. We are working now to see how Norway best can use our resources to support NDCs. And it's really important for us to work with partners and global alliances so that it's efficient what we and others are doing. It's not a very original thought to be supporting this. So it's extremely important that it's coordinated to be efficient. And also we think this work will go now from, from creating a good NDC to implementing NDCs, which is more challenging in many ways. We know that there's a lot of competence and capacity needed for that, and we can be among those who are doing that. So that was a little bit of what we are doing, maybe even more so how we are thinking, how we have streamed, put it into different work streams. We worked for a year or so making the action plan and looking at getting the measurements ready and so on. Now it's an implementation phase. Some of these things take little time, others takes time, but it's extremely important. And we also we've spent time with other donors on this in the process, and we also in a way want to challenge other donors on it, because we think this is an effort that in different ways apply to us all. So thank you for now.
Thank you so much, Bård Vegar. We're now going to hear from our partners. I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself in the beginning. I was so excited about the panel that I just wanted to get going. My name is Stig Travik. I'm Director of Climate and Environment in Norad. I'm now going to invite the panelists up and take place up here. So first, I'll ask Dr. Nicole Burroughs, Deputy Administrator of USAID, come and join us. We also have Dr. Heike Hen, who is the Director of Climate in BMZ. Would you please join us as well? We also have with us Alex Way, who is heading the team of climate integration in FCDO. He's with us virtually. And maybe Bård Vegar, you could take place also in the panel now, because you're going to discuss afterwards after we hear our partners. I would like to start with you, Nicole, to share your perspective and USAID's thinking about this. Of course, we're very excited to have USAID actively back in the club. So we're going to take good note of everything you said. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. We're very excited to be here, to be back. So I'm Nicole Burroughs. As stated, I'm the Deputy Assistant Administrator for Policies, the Head of Policy for USAID. So not a climate specialist like many of you here in this room. I'm also, as of about a month ago, the head of the budget office for USAID as well. So I control the numbers and the words. So I think it's a sign really of USAID's commitment that they send the head of the budget office to COP. We are very committed to working with you all on increasing our climate change commitments. I sat next to Administrator Power last night at dinner, and she was talking about how USAID is a climate agency. And in our new strategy, which we've just recently released for external comment, which I hope you all will read and provide some comments back to us. We're looking forward to the feedback. She made very clear that she would like climate to, much like the presentation we just heard from our colleagues here, to spread across all of our other development and humanitarian areas. So we're working right now to figure out, well, what does that really mean in practice? It's nice to say that out loud, but does it mean in education, for example, when we look at the materials that we put out around the world, are we ensuring that they have climate included in the materials? Are we ensuring that we're supporting women in some of the roles around the world where we want to strengthen our climate commitments? So we're actively right now trying to figure out what it means to integrate climate into our agency, into everything that we do. And as the budget side, we're also looking to see how we can leverage some of these commitments. I can tell you that the US is committed, the president himself has made very large financial commitments, and we're committed to pursuing those. At the same time, US government financing alone isn't going to be enough. We all realize that as well. And we're looking very much to the private sector to figure out how we can partner better with the private sector. We have our own roadblocks within our own government. it can be a little bit difficult to work with us sometimes. We're looking at ways that we can ease some of these partnerships, not only with partner governments, but with partners in the private sector to really find out how we can leverage these opportunities more quickly and more effectively. So I will actually leave it at that, and I will turn it over to whoever is next.
Thank you, Nicole. I'll just ask Heike to go next. So are you mic'd up? Yeah, you're already mic'd up.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stig. Happy to be here, and it's really excellent that Norad put this topic in front of us. And the only thing is that after your excellent presentation and the very good questions and also suggestions for the way ahead, I hardly know what to say because there's one difference. We don't have our new government yet, but we have a strategy that wanted also to answer to all these questions, and that was just released in September. So there is a huge likelihood, and but I mean, in more honest, in more serious words, I very much appreciate the main message that the Paris Agreement and the SDGs can only be achieved together, and therefore the integration of development and climate mitigation and adaptation is key from our perspective as well. And I would also echo maybe a bit stronger your second thought. I think everything on ownership, alignment, aid effectiveness is still very new, fresh, important. Although we remember it from way back in Accra and Paris and Busan, but you are really spot on in linking those together. And we tried the same within our BMZ 2030, so many similarities, reform process. And we were reducing the partner countries, trying for more focus and putting also global goods and development in the center of our strategy process. And we identified 5 core areas, and 3 relate to climate and energy, natural resources, and also agriculture and food security, like you mentioned it. And 3 out of 5 is already a huge chunk of our development cooperation budget. And the rest, of course, is also about mainstreaming. For us, for example, going multilateral on education, but that does not mean that topics like climate are no longer part of our conversation with multilateral organizations on education, for example. Same for health. But there are sectors where it's more difficult, apart from the energy supply coming from renewable sources. But what can be the add-on, the plus? So we struggle with this as well, but mainstreaming is important, impact assessment, and also monitoring, and we try to work with standard indicators because also resources are scarce, and our Ministry of Finance is asking us exactly what are your results. And then when we try to argue, okay, yes, we have results on mitigation, but we have also the co-benefits on development, then the conversation becomes a bit difficult with our budget people, because it's not as straightforward as the CO2 reductions. So there we try to work with standard indicators and then to push our system. And regarding in a more focused way at our climate and energy core activities, there we want to focus really on ambitious portfolios of partner countries that have like a whole of government approach that bring together within their NDCs development and climate. And regarding aid effectiveness, we are a strong supporter of the NDC partnership to bring here also alignment, different development partners together. So we want to form strategic climate cooperation with partners. We have a huge interest from partner countries for our new core areas. And we want to bring new areas in, not new, we are already engaged on energy, but there we feel energy access and renewables brings also development and climate together, and the just energy transition that we all need is also about development and climate, because it has to be a story of prosperity, of growth, of opportunities for the global south, because if not, it won't be successful on the climate front as well. And again, we for the first time put a high priority to sustainable urban development, because I think this is also something that brings the living conditions of people in cities, in the growing cities, together with mitigation, 70% of the emissions coming out of cities. Adaptation, the risks in cities are very high, especially in the formal sector. So this is something that we want to focus on. And just to name another aspect, and then I stop, that is also part of the new core strategy, is for all the 33 countries that are interested in working in the core area responsibility for our climate, for our planet, climate and energy with us, we want to facilitate a risk assessment analysis for partner countries, working with local research institutions, having as a partner-owned enterprise, but then as a basis for planning for our investment, but also open for others, so that we exactly know what is happening in the sectors and what is envisaged moving forward. So I stop it here, but excellent that you bring us together for this discussion.
Well, thank you, Heike. That was excellent. We now have with us virtually Alex Wade, who leads the team on integration in FCDO. So we're very interested to hear from you, Alex, how you're working on this in FCDO. Over to you. We cannot hear you yet, Alex. We'll give the technicians one minute to try to get Alex on, because he's been waiting patiently on this. Could I ask one question maybe while we try to get Alex back on? I was curious to when you talk about standard indicators, Heike, does that mean you have only a few indicators in all your programs that go across, or how do you work on that?
Yes and no. The idea is to have a couple of standard indicators. I think the number is like 5 or 6. And the idea is that every single program within this intervention area reports at least to one of these standard indicators. So there's still flexibility regarding national priorities or specificalities of the region, the programs, on and so forth. But there's also the possibility to aggregate the results and then have a clearer understanding of what the impact is.
Great. Alex, can you hear us now? We cannot hear you still. Just give our technicians one more second. Maybe they will fix it.
There was already progress.
There's progress. We can see you. It seems you can hear us. We can just not hear you. You try to say something again, Alex. Still no chance. Alex, would it be okay that we ask the technicians to try to fix it, and we go on with the panel discussion, and we try to bring you in as soon as we can hear you. So the moment you just try, and the moment we hear you, we'll let you in. Yep. Okay. So I'm sorry about that, Alex, and sorry about that to all of you. We're now going to have a little discussion that you're going to facilitate, Bård Vegar, based on what we've already heard. So I'll just turn it over to you and let you run this conversation with our guests. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Stig, and thanks for the comments so far. I mean, I think we're in a phase now where it's well established that climate and development is integrated, and it's part of what we'll be doing in the decades to come. But we don't know exactly what it means. And none of us do really, but we're trying to figure out. So that was my point of departure. Now I wanted to get a discussion on some aspects with that. Maybe starting with which specific issues does that mean that we should work more with? To exemplify, you mentioned urban development. What you are doing there, we are considering. It's not been important for us. But maybe I could ask the both of you to frankly reflect a little bit on that. I mean, almost all development agencies does a lot now on nature-based solutions of different kinds, on energy, on food systems. But of course, there are also other parts of the broader environmental agenda, like the ones we are considering. It would be good to hear a little bit about your thinking. Which other environmental issues or agendas are you thinking about? Nicole, could I ask you to start? Oh, you don't have.
I'm sorry.
I don't.
There you go.
Thanks. Sorry about that. Well, again, we're looking to start, at least, we're looking across everything, across development and humanitarian programs. I think that we haven't looked very closely at our humanitarian programs in particular in the past. And so that's one area of great focus where we think that there will be a significant amount of emphasis. We're talking about indicators earlier, and we don't actually focus at the moment on our humanitarian programs in this context at all. And so we're going to start to collect some of this information. And I think as we start to gather some of this information, we'll have a more clear idea of which sectors will likely include. I think global health is another one that we've identified where we see a lot of opportunities. And we're really excited to see so many events here at COP that are linking climate and health spaces. So I think those two in particular happen to be areas that we're going to focus on. Again, we've put out our climate strategy and we'll have an implementation plan that comes along with it after we get some feedback from external actors. And so I think we'll articulate some of the key areas that we found in that implementation plan.
Heike.
Yeah, I mean, this is really the important question. And when we looked at it, I would like to mention two areas where we feel we have to do better. We are not good at, there are more, but two main areas. And one is that came also up in your presentation, what we do right now on jobs, employment, economy, vocational training. We have aspects of green jobs, so on and so forth, but we have not really a coherent, comprehensive green economy approach. This is one of the things that we want to move forward, hopefully with the new government, and they agree with this. This is really key, and there are so many opportunities there, but we have not yet fully, not even half of the opportunities explored. And the second area I would like to mention, we made a lot of progress in mainstreaming, especially the adaptation, on the adaptation side. But we had portfolio analysis done, and from my perspective, there's too much add-on projects that is not really integrated for a co-benefit. But it's rather, okay, let's get some climate money on, or what can we do? What is the first idea that I'm exaggerating a bit, but to make the problem clear. But this is from our assessment, that is something we have to look into to come really to an integrated relevant impact on adaptation and just not crossing a box with some small irrelevant activities.
I think that's interesting to hear what you're saying about green economy, and I mean like a deep approach, because we also see that from time to time, climate used to be an add-on, something that you put on top of something you're already doing, or you want, and then we can call it climate also. And maybe especially on adaptation, that has been an issue. And when I look at our work, I have to say, like you're saying, we don't have a deep green transition, green economy approach that is firmly rooted. We are mostly working out of a development model, while maybe the future model of our work will be a deeply rooted green development. But turning to another area that has come up, I mean, most of the time, climate and development go well together, but also there are real dilemmas. One that's very obvious throughout the years in the climate COPs is, of course, the degree of prioritization between mitigation and adaptation. But a very specific one that has turned up in now, it's also very political, is of course on your energy work. Let's say if climate is most important, then you will maybe work to replace coal in the middle-income countries with renewables. If fighting poverty is most important, you will maybe attract private capital to develop solar in the least developed countries in Africa. Both is development and climate, but they are different approaches, and it's a real dilemma, or a real even a conflict of interest in where you're spending your money. So again, Heike, starting with you, a few words about how you deal with these real dilemmas and what they are.
Yeah, again, spot on, Bart, on this. I mean, together with the US, we are just participating in this new exciting partnership with South Africa for just energy transition, together with also France, the UK, and the EU Commission, where this will be really brought to the test. I mean, in a country that has already energy shortages and gets 90% of its energy from coal, and we want to speed up the transition, how not to increase the energy shortages and bring problems to the economy, but also to the social sectors, and politically maybe also difficulties in countries. I mean, I cannot talk about what we will do in South Africa, but talking about other countries, we try to do both, and adding to what we do with private sector, with multilateral partners, also on the renewable side, where private partners are not going 200 kilometers out of the capital to bring expensive renewable energy to small villages. We try to bring innovative instruments in this sector. For example, we started this year a new instrument for decentralized renewable energy with crowdfunding, to bring other investors that also see the social benefit, or maybe are more interested in the social benefit and the climate benefit, into financing in Benin or other also Sahel countries, really decentralized renewable energy for poor populations. And we have seen a huge interest also from other development partners who said, oh, that sounds interesting, that's something new. You take the risk, Germany, and we are happy to do this, because we don't know, it can be that it doesn't work. But it's just too important, as you said, that we have to accept also a trial and error aspect in this kind of investment.
So Nicole.
Hello, can you hear me?
Now I think we have
very
Alex.
really
Just
briefly
very
from
quick,
Nicole.
yeah, so as a budget, head of budget prioritization is what I do every day. And so I can tell you that we've had a lot of discussions over the past year with our interagency partners, as the president has really pushed us to have a whole of government approach to climate change. And I've had just as many meetings on some energy issues, some key policy issues, as I have on climate change as well. So what we're going to be doing is mapping our climate change strategy to our funding over the next several years to really figure out where our investments are going and where we're going to get the biggest bang for our buck in alignment with our goals. And I will say that, I think it was some of your comments earlier talking about how in the US, we have a very stovepiped system. We're even with energy over here and climate over here. And so breaking down and starting to talk to each other more and really dive deep into what we're doing programmatically in some of these areas. Some of the folks hadn't even talked to each other. And so now we're getting a better understanding of what we're doing in country across our different sectors. And I think that will help the prioritization as we really, really hone in with our moderator effectiveness data. So, well, is that where we should be putting our funding, or is, should it go over there? So it'll be an interesting exercise. And I can tell you, people are working day, night, weekends, all the time on this. And it's really exciting. It's really exciting. So.
Good to hear. And it strikes me, if you control the money, the words, and the prioritization, what's left to control? So is Alex ready now?
I think Alex is with us. So maybe Alex, you can try to pick up a little bit. I think you're heading the integration team. So what they were just discussing now about silos and so on, maybe something you've encountered as well. So please, over to you, Alex.
Absolutely, and thank you for bearing with me. I hope you can hear me okay at this point. Absolutely, and I think the messages I've been hearing, I've been able to hear you guys coming through are around learning, around experimentation in terms of approaches, understanding what this actually means in practice. That is absolutely where we are as well. But if you'll just permit me just to back up one pace, because I think it's from a UK angle, it's been a long journey that we've been coming on in this regard, and it's a journey we've still got a long way to go on. So I mean, clearly we're very aware that at the moment we're facing that triple emergency around climate change, around biodiversity loss, and poverty, and of course to date, as panelists have already articulated, the temptation and the tendency has been to see that as something apart from mainstream, if you want to call it that, development assistance and delivery of the wider sustainable development goals. The journey we're on is that journey of bringing climate action on biodiversity loss together with delivery of the wider sustainable development goals in order to make progress for people and planet together, simply because we firmly believe you can't make progress on any one of those three elements without really bringing them all together. Now, of course, the UK is committed to a dedicated climate finance. We have committed to doubling that to around £11.6 billion over the next 5 years. But that's, and of course, 3 billion rather of that is going towards nature aspects, and indeed we're looking to achieve that balance between mitigation and adaptation. But that money, although it's a large sum, is only a portion of the wider development assistance budget, the UK budget. So that work that I'm leading here within the integration team in the FCDO is really looking at all the rest. And essentially there are three elements to what we're trying to achieve here. It's about, as a very minimum, the do no harm agenda. And we do well on that, but we don't have enough data, I think, particularly on sort of certain aspects of biodiversity and nature, certain aspects of climate change. We need to keep building that knowledge, that data, and the skills that go with it in order to really analyze it and make good, proper use of it in program design and delivery. Then there is ensuring that the wider range of work we do delivers for the most vulnerable, those who are most vulnerable to climate change and biodiversity loss, the impacts of those crises, but also the least able to adapt to it. So thinking, as panelists have said already, about what can our education work bring to this? What can our work on social development more broadly? What can our work on good governance bring to the table on this? There is lots out there, but it's a fairly new set of questions that we're asking people to ask of themselves and of their work. People who are experts in their field, but may not be so comfortable and so expert in the sort of wider field of climate change and biodiversity loss. And then, of course, there's the support for those clean, sustainable growth pathways as well. We defined what we've called Paris alignment, that alignment of UK official development assistance to the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement in 4 ways. There's only four pillars to our work. One was the phase out of UK aid support for fossil fuels. That we've made some real headway on this year with a brand new policy that we're already implementing to really phase out all but the most important transition fuels in that. So that's making headway, but it's also part of the journey. The second element is around ensuring an appropriate use of a shadow carbon price in our sort of bilateral programs. That's a very good illustration of that learning that we all need to be doing on this. Shadow carbon pricing is clearly a well-established concept. It's been done by many leaders in the sector for many years. But in the kind of context that we are all active in as development partners, some of the data isn't easy to come by, and the skill sets needed are also still, only to be found in certain places. So that is still very much a journey that we are on. The third element of the 4 is around, and I think a colleague on the panel has already mentioned this, the proportionate use of climate risk assessment, climate and environment risk assessment. Can we do a lot better at understanding both the impact of climate change on our work, but also the impact that our work, the initiatives that our development assistance funds on climate change and biodiversity loss in the locality where they are operational? The answer for me is absolutely yes, we can, but we are still working with the skill sets and the data that we need in order to understand the problem and then to address it. So that is the third very important element here. And the final of the 4 elements is around ensuring complete alignment between what we do as a bilateral donor and indeed with our partners through the multilaterals is absolutely aligned with countries' NDCs and long-term strategies, so that we're all swimming in the same direction, and that we're all keeping each other sort of ambitious. And this is an opportunity for dialogue and consultation and cooperation to keep raising the levels of ambition. So those are the 4 elements that we're working on. I want to be very clear that that is something which we made good progress on, but we still have a long way to go. And that is why things, developments such as the OECD Development Assistance Committee's recent statement of 27th of October that commits a wider cohort of global donors to Paris alignment of aid is really, really important. We're looking forward to working with those partners around the table, develop the tools and the approaches that are really needed, because this is something we urgently all need to get behind.
Thank you, Alex. We'll do just a last round on one issue here before we round up, and I'll start with you, Alex, and then go to Nicole and Heike. And that is, I mean, it becomes pretty apparent when we speak, all 4 of us, that when we are talking about Paris alignment or supporting the Paris Agreement, we are talking a bit about somewhat different things and presenting it in different ways, which is also, of course, because there is no agreement exactly within the Paris Agreement what it means to be aligned with it. The OECD has just reached a decision that will also be presented actually today in another speech in a speech here by Susanna Morad. But that's also not wholly specific what that means. So a question to you is, should we develop even more specific targets and measurements and ways of understanding across the board between different kinds of donors what we actually talk about, also so transparency can be even better on that. Alex.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree on the transparency point entirely. I think that's a really important part of the mix. And I think that's something which we as a group of donors and working with the OECD DAC can particularly make progress on. But I also agree with the point about methodologies, tools, approaches. I think that's so important. We don't have all the tools at our disposal now. We know there are many who've been experimenting with different approaches for years, and there are pros and cons to each of those approaches. I think within all this, we do still need we don't want to become overly prescriptive. The overall ambition of keeping temperature rises well below 2 degrees is very clear, and we need to keep that ultimate objective in mind per the Paris Agreement. We do need a set of sort of agreed approaches in some ways where those approaches really work, because there's a lot of economies of scale that can be achieved by working together on this stuff. And that's something which I think we are particularly keen to see go forward and work with others on.
Nicole.
So this is where I could get my colleagues in trouble by making promises, but I will say that if we're going to achieve any of these goals, I sometimes say within the United States government, we have to put our badges in the drawer. And this sounds like one of these opportunities where we maybe put our passports in the cupboard and we can all work together to find some common ground. And again, I don't want to articulate what that might be for the real climate experts in the agency, but it does seem to make sense on the surface of it. And it's something that I think that we could look forward to.
Thank you very much. I think this is also excellent moving forward. And I would say, yes, we are not really clear on many of those aspects you mentioned, and it would be an added value if we would do more. And I would come up with a couple of examples. I mean, regarding Paris alignment, the UK and us initiated, for example, an MDB development partner group where we work jointly to have a joint understanding and use also our voice collectively towards the MDBs. But you could do the same, I think, because we also have the same partners, or we could exchange experience, for example, on the instruments of greening the finance sector. We all are investing in so many funds. We have so many maybe similar partners, and we could team up to first develop a joint understanding of what is important for us, then exchange experience and then lessons learned, so on and so forth, and also on other areas. And by that, identify what it means to be Paris aligned for us and to become better.
Thank you. Very much in agreement there on the direction of the work for the years to come. I just want to sum up briefly. We've just now heard from actually the three major agencies and the three biggest donor countries in absolute terms, the US, Germany, and the UK. And I should add the biggest donor alongside Sweden in relative terms, and also a quite big agency, Norad, all agreeing on the direction of this, all in different ways, working to integrate climate and environment and align or support the Paris Agreement's goal. But I think also all of us understanding that we're not there yet. A lot of development of that work remains, implementation remains. And for us also, just during this talk, I've had several points thinking that, well, this is actually something we have to do better ourselves also, hearing from all of you. Thanks to all of you for joining the panel. Thanks for those who joined us here at the Bellona Pavilion, not to speak of all the millions of listeners around the world who followed this seminar. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.